ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ, ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਨੂੰ and welcome to another edition of Dukh Sukh। ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਫੇਰ ਅੱਜ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈ, ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈ। ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਤਾਂ I hope you very much are enjoying the show, that you're learning something, it's helping you in some shape or form. And of course, please do get in contact either via Sangat TV reception, or you can follow me on either Facebook or Instagram. More than happy to support you. And of course, the guests that come into the studio with us, they're also for you. So please do get in contact and we'll put you in contact with them as well. So today's show, ਆਪਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਚਿੱਤਾ ਫੇਤੀ ਕਰਾਉਣੀ ਆ ਵੀ the wheel of life, and reminding ourselves that we use the wheel of life to establish what's going on in our world at this moment. Where are we spending the most amount of our time? Where do we focus most of our money? And more importantly, what's important to us? Why do we do it? Why do we spend all that time and energy in that area? And the reason we ask that is so you understand, where are you lacking at this moment? Where is your taklif? Where do you understand that you're not getting more of what you truly want because you're spending too much time in another area? And we understand that because in life there are probably 3 or 4 key challenges that face us. There's our physical challenges, as in something to do with either our bodies that can hold us back, and we feel that we can't do it because we're not as complete as everybody else from a physical sense. Emotionally, a lot of us get overwhelmed. We become full of fear. We have anxiety going on, and just general emotional stress in our lives that we kind of become. We kind of give into, and we end up being controlled by that emotion instead of taking control of it. And then of course mentally as well, at the same time we continue to repeat stories in our head or tell ourselves something that in reality probably isn't really there, or that we've created more of it than what it really is. So ultimately what are we trying to do? We're always trying to gain control, and that is not a way to live, because the more we try and gain control, different symptoms show up in our life. So it could be a rash, or it could be a habit, or it could be a disease within inside of us that begins to surface on the outside, so onto our physical plane, as we talked about. So one of our guests here today in the studio is Ramesh Hirani, who's here to talk about diabetes, which is also a disease that features out not necessarily physically, not necessarily emotionally, but actually in all areas of our life, so mentally, emotionally and physically. Welcome, Ramesh.
Thank you.
So, Ramesh, you have an interesting story, because you yourself were told 5 years ago, was it?
Yeah.
You were suffering or potentially diabetic. Yeah. Tell us a little about your story and how it's come about.
I was diagnosed diabetic 5 years ago. I was diagnosed late because I didn't feel the symptoms. So when I was diagnosed, it was quite severe and had been onset for quite some time. And I was given a concoction of medication which I was asked to go on, and instead of doing that I decided to not take the medication and learn about this disease and see if I could actually reverse this disease myself.
What was your lifestyle like just up until the point when you were told you may be diabetic?
So
a lot of us don't know the actual symptoms leading up to until we're actually told by a doctor.
That's right, yeah. Up to that point I've spoken to many people about what they feel their lifestyle is about, how their lifestyle is. And like me, I thought I was living a healthy lifestyle. And you go to the gym once a week and you actually think you're going 3 times a week, yeah? But you're not doing enough. Or you have one healthy meal and you think you're eating healthily because you've had that one healthy meal on Sunday afternoon. But the rest of the meals are all full of fats and fast foods and everything else. So I thought I was being healthy, but as it turned out, I wasn't. I was very overweight. I was 98 kilos at the time I was diagnosed. Yeah. And my symptoms were, all of a sudden had come. I was on a flight actually on the way to Nairobi. And I was at I remember very clearly, I was at the departure lounge and I'd gone to the bathroom 3 or 4 times. And I was constantly thirsty. So when I arrived in Nairobi, I went for a checkup, and they confirmed that my blood sugars were, dangerously high. Yeah, I remember the doctor saying to me, she couldn't understand why I was still conscious with those levels. Yeah, so they had actually prepared a room for me in the hospital for me to stay there for 2 days to get my sugars under control.
So was that about dehydration in the body, or was it because you were eating certain foods, more of them, that were sort of causing your sugars to fluctuate?
No, so how diabetes happens is you get something called insulin resistance. Now what I'm talking about is type 2 diabetes, which is very different to type 1. 80% or 80 to 90% of people suffer from type 2 diabetes, which is what I was diagnosed with. So what happens is we develop something called insulin resistance. And when we have insulin resistance, your body cannot utilize the glucose that's in your body, which is the fuel for our cells, to function correctly. So what happens is the cells are depleted of fuel, and then you go into a ketosis state where you start burning fat. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And what happens is, even though you're eating, your body's asking for more food because it's asking for more fuel, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a cycle, and then you start burning fat. So a lot of diabetics will suffer with dehydration and feeling thirsty, because the thirstiness is the kidneys trying to flush out the excess glucose.
Right.
And then you will start, a lot of diabetics will start losing weight because you start burning fat as an energy source as opposed to using glucose. So those are your first sort of telltale signs.
But wouldn't somebody thinking that they're going to the gym, and I'm losing weight, they're probably not connecting the two
Sometimes
bits?
they don't connect, And most people, actually, the type 2 diabetes doesn't start when you're diagnosed. It doesn't start 6 months before you're diagnosed. It actually can start up to 10 years before diagnosis. And because the symptoms are so delicate and so difficult to track, until you have the main symptoms, it goes unchecked. Yeah.
And what are the kind of key causes in the lifestyle of what's actually driving the diabetes? Because like I said, a lot of us have a misconception that it's all about the sugary foods that I'm eating, you know, the fizzy drink that I have.
Fizzy drinks, or
it's
the cake.
the cakes, or the junk food that I consume. Like, you think, I'm just doing it, you know, now and again on a Friday night, Saturday night, you know, and it turns into the whole weekend. But actually, is it well before that, like you say, that it's along the journey? Yeah,
it's well before that, and there's a big misconception that eating sugary foods cause diabetes. That's not true. And a lot of people associate sugar with diabetes, and that's not true either. High sugars is not diabetes. High sugar is just the symptom of diabetes.
Right. Okay.
So to understand why we get ill, you can see on the slide there, there's 4 main causes. So the first cause is that we lead a sedentary lifestyle. So we don't do enough physical exercise. And
so sedentary being, so I go to work, I sit in front of my desk, and I'm typing all day long, or I'm just not getting up and walking around enough.
Just not walking around,
Okay.
And when you finish work, where do you sit to get home? You sit in your car or on the bus, and then you go home and then you sit in front of the telly. So basically, there's just not enough physical activity going on, right?
Yeah.
The second one, which is a really big factor, is our emotional state and the stress that we are constantly under.
Yeah.
So you have stress at work, and some people have stress at home, maybe with their partners, maybe with kids, financial stress. I mean, it's just non-stop, So there's lots of stress that puts a huge load on our body.
Yeah, and that's where, as I reflected on earlier, is it comes in both emotional state and it comes in mental, because it's almost the two are feeding each other.
Yeah,
you're living in a moment of what I call as anxiety and fear, because you don't know how to control it, and ultimately that's what you're trying to grip onto, is how do I control it? And assume that diabetes is a similar way. Once you learn you've got it, your immediate reaction is, I want to stop this. How do I stop this?
How do I stop this? How do I stop this? So, I mean, with stress, you know, there are ways, you know, to manage stress, you know, like meditation, and these are some of the things that I teach on the courses that we run. But the main cause of lifestyle diseases, because type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease, is poor nutrition and what we eat in our body, the fuel that we put into our body, So when I was diagnosed, I quickly looked at the kind of nutrition that I was having, and I realized very quickly, the question I had in my mind was, if I was putting this fuel in my body and it caused me to have this disease because of the condition of my body, if I can now change the condition of my body, can I get rid of that disease? And that was the theory I was working behind. So I actually came back to London very quickly after my diagnosis and started researching to see how I could change the condition of my body, and what is the right food, the right fuel that goes into this body, a human body. And that was what I looked at and studied.
So what was the optimum way to do that, or what would you desire as, what is optimum health within that?
So the way to do that is, if you're a car mechanic, right, and you were to service a car, right? You would open the hood and you would look at the engine, and by looking at the engine and the design of the engine, you would know that this is either a diesel or a petrol car. You would know which fuels go in there, which oils and which filters go in there. In the same way, we have an engine, which is our digestive tract. And if you were to open and study, and many biologists, you can open and study, and you can see what is the right fuel for our body. In fact, there's over 300 markers that tell us that we are actually herbivores. So when we move away from the herbivores are creatures that eat plant-based foods.
Right.
Yeah?
Okay. So we're saying plant-based organic foods.
Plant-based organic foods. Yeah. Right. So if we put the wrong fuel in our body, then things start to break down. In the same way, if you put diesel in a petrol car, it'll drive for a little while and it'll start to conk out, right?
Yeah.
Until you put the right fuel back in. So we operate in the same way. If we put the wrong fuel in, we get diseases and things break down. If we put the right fuel in, we have an amazing ability to heal and repair, which is how you can reverse diseases.
So I guess if you think about the South Asian diet, you know, a lot of us were brought up on dal and sabji and eating really healthily, and we've now moved to the Western diet of going, like you say, junk food or substituting with different meal occasions, which is fine. You know, I'm not discrediting any of that. They come with their own nutritional challenges. But I guess it's exactly the same way of how much can your body tolerate before it actually says you're not giving me the good stuff.
There are tolerances, right? And if we think back to when we were sort of young teenagers, it didn't matter how much we ate, we'd never put on weight, and we always had energy. But you see, so what happens as we get older, those tolerances suddenly become less and less and less, but we still keep eating and thinking like we're 18 and 20, right? But even then, I mean, you know, I'm in my mid-40s. When I was 20, there wasn't so many fast food joints around. And I used to always go home. I remember my mum cooked me a nice home-cooked meal, right? Nowadays, even my kids are eating fast food as well, you know, twice or thrice a week, So it's hard to combat what's out there, the advertising and everything that's going on. But if we are really serious about becoming well, reversing diseases, then we just have to look back and see what are the right foods for us, study a little bit, maybe read a book. You can download so many books, there's so many YouTube videos out there on whole plant-based foods and the benefits of whole plant-based foods.
So how did you move it on? So once you discovered then, okay, that I'm putting the wrong foods into my body, what were the kind of steps that you had taken to almost start to, because you've started to reverse the diabetes effectively, and what I remember you telling me was that you know, you've got it at a point where you're now a lot more stable with it. So how does somebody go about doing that?
It's really easy. All I did was I Googled reversing diabetes, right? You know, Google is our best friend right now, Okay? So you can find out anything on Google. And what I did was I discovered a number of doctors in the US and around the world that are now reversing disease through nutrition. So I studied Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. Gabriel Cousins, Professor T. Colin Campbell, and John McDougall, and you can look these guys up on YouTube. There's lots of TED Talks they've done. They have their own YouTube channels. They have books you can order on Amazon, and I studied their books, and they all advocate whole plant-based foods. I started implementing exactly what they had said in these books, and my HbA1c, which is a measure of the sugar that's in your body, should be below 6. At diagnosis, mine was 14.9. Wow. But by implementing these right foods and following what these doctors were saying in their books, it went from 14.9 to 7 in just 4 weeks without any medication, right? And then to get it further down, I went on a course that was run in India by a doctor called Dr. Nandita Shah, who runs a reversing diabetes program under her company called Saran. And she's also follows the same principles as Neil Barnard and John McDougall. And then I quickly got it down below the 6 mark, So really...
And what were the fundamentals? Is it all about, like you said, controlling with the food and eating more vegetables, but more...
So switching your food from things that are high fat and animal-based to low-fat, plant-based, Okay? But it doesn't mean you can't have fats. But you have fats in the whole form. So for example, you know, we all love cashew nuts and things like that. You can have those. But if you're having oil, which is not in its whole form, those contribute to insulin resistance. And the key is to reverse it to insulin sensitivity, your cells back to insulin sensitivity, which means your cells can absorb the glucose, taking the glucose out of your bloodstream back into your cells.
So would you say, therefore, that this diet is more for people that are purely vegetarians, or more about those that want to have non-veg diet, you know, like fish and eggs, etc.?
If you look at Asians, right? I'm a Gujarati. Most Gujaratis are vegetarian.
Yeah.
And Gujarati diabetes is reaching epidemic levels, right?
Yeah.
So being vegetarian is not enough, right?
Yeah.
Because in vegetarian there's dairy, right?
Yes.
And dairy is one of the biggest contributors to ill health, right? Not just diabetes, cancer, heart disease, so many. And there's proven studies now of how harmful dairy is. You don't have to, you know, don't take my word for it. Look it up online. There's many studies.
And yet we eat so much of it when we think of yogurt, when we take tea, some cheese.
Paneer, I mean ghee,
Yeah.
I mean butter. It's everywhere, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So if we start being mindful about the amount of dairy that we're consuming, right, and if even the best thing is to actually really just cut it out, you can actually eat more than you've ever eaten. Become healthy, right? Start reversing your diseases. And one of the amazing things that happened to me was when I was trying to reverse my disease, I actually lost all my excess weight, and I wasn't trying to diet. So I went from 98 to 73 kilos in about it was about 8 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've been on diets for so many years. I mean, everyone's been on diets. Everyone keeps going on diets, and you put on weight and you lose weight. You put on weight, you lose weight. This was the first time I lost weight, and I've never put it back on, no matter how much I eat. Yeah.
Wow.
So your body is an amazing. It's an amazing thing that where its nature is to heal, and if we give it the right tools, it will constantly heal and repair.
So you've talked about type 2.
Yeah.
What about the type 1s that are probably a little bit further gone into the process?
Yeah.
Is there a hope for them to be able to reverse their situation?
So with type 1, you can't always reverse, but what you can certainly do is reduce the amount of medications that you need, because type 1 is an autoimmune disease. Yeah, it's very different to type 2, which is a hormonal imbalance disease. Yeah,
right. Okay.
So with type 1, your own immune system is killing the beta cells in your pancreas, which produce insulin. So most type 1 diabetics are either producing zero insulin or very little that is insufficient.
Yep.
So they do need to take insulin injections to maintain their sugar levels.
Yep.
But what we found is people that go on whole plant-based foods is that they do reduce drastically the amount of insulin that they need to take. So anything foreign that goes in your body, if we can reduce it, it's going to be better. Yeah.
So just to be clear then, that if you're a type 1 and you currently take insulin, you need to continue doing that. Please consult your doctor, consult your health specialist, because we're not advocating that you come off your insulin. With type 2, there are opportunities, as Ramesh has kind of explained, that you can reverse it through whole plant-based eating foods, which if you get in contact with us or contact with Ramesh, we can set out a dietitian or a plan for yourselves to help you on that. So again, I just wanted to reiterate, whatever you do, please always consult your doctor. Remember, we're just here to give you advice and bring forward different ways of thinking and approaching your challenges. That doesn't mean that what we say is a given, as I say, what your doctor says, and you know your own health of what to do. So just going back to, you've had quite a bit of success with clients that have approached you. So you've then gone on to, like you're saying, set up your own workshops and...
Yeah, so it all started with reversing my own disease. And then my dad, who was diabetic for 27 years, I implemented the diet with him. And he not only reversed his diabetes, he reversed his high cholesterol, his blood pressure, and his heart disease. And he's lost a lot of weight, and he's more energetic than ever. He then asked me to talk to all of his friends and family members, which I have to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I put a little program together. It turned into a workshop where I conducted it for our community. And then from there, I've just been doing workshops for the last, it's been like 4 years. Yeah, I've been running workshops.
And what do you sort of talk people through? Is it just how to buy the food or how to prepare the food? Yeah,
a little bit of that. But, what I've discovered is everybody can get the information that I'm delivering online, right? What people lack is the implementation and how do we fit this into our busy lives? How do we do that? And how do I understand what's actually happening in my body, right? So what I cover in the course is the first part, I really, really nail it so everybody understands what has gone wrong and why it's gone wrong. Then the second part we cover, right, how do we change that to now fix that problem? How do we enable our bodies to reverse that? And it's explained in a way that everybody understands that if I do X, I will get this result. And if I do Y, I will get this result. Then after lunch, we then go on to how do we implement this in our lives. So we have a shopping list, I have a kitchen replacement chart, how to deal with social events, like weddings. Weddings got the worst food on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we manage those things when we go out for birthday parties and restaurants, office parties, things like that. And I travel a lot. So how do we manage things like aeroplane flights, long flights, and eating the right food? Yeah. All of the challenges that people will have, we tackle that in the third part of the presentation.
And then you've gone on to have quite a bit of success. So I know even doctors have now come towards you, and you've helped them reverse their challenges in their lives.
So doctors are no different to me and you, right? And they've been through a set of training, and some of them go through 5 or 7 years of training. And what I hear back from most doctors is in their 5 or 7 years, they spend 2 weeks talking about nutrition.
Wow.
So they're not really trained in nutrition, and it's not that they're not doing a bad job, but they're doing what they're taught, and what they're taught is allopathy, which is medicine, And most of the medicine that we take doesn't deal with the root cause. What it does is it tempers the symptoms, so we just feel better, or the symptoms are controlled. But unless you get rid of the root cause, the symptoms always remain. What we do is we look at the root cause, eradicate it, so the symptom disappears.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much of this is the physical doing, and because I look at things on 3 parts, that you have your mind, you have your heart, and then you have the element of exercise. Now, I said it before in a previous show to most people that, most of us concentrate on one extreme to the other. We either focus on the food and go completely, right, this is the kind of foods I'm eating, and great, that sees short-term benefits in terms of helping to lose weight. Or I go off on the other tangent, which is I'm at the gym 24/7 for a couple of weeks, I get to my ideal weight, once I'm there and go, right, I'm done. And actually we end up back at square one.
Yeah, we do end up back at square
and I
one.
guess here we're trying to teach people that, look, it's not just about one or the other, it's how do you combine both, and then more importantly, how do you stay in that mindset, which is the hardest thing, because I think once you see the result, that should be proof in itself, but most people kind of fall off the wagon after about 2 weeks.
Yeah, they do. I don't know if you've ever worked with a personal trainer, right? Or had some of you may have worked with personal trainers, but they'll always tell you when you're on an exercise regime that diet is 80% of getting the results, What I found in this program, and when I look back at when I wasn't getting results and when I was, is that once your diet is really good and your body is in a state of healing, your mindset starts to clear. Right, our mindset is so important. It's not just about what we put in our bodies. It's how we can relieve stress and all the other things. But once our body is working in a really fluid way, our mind starts to clear. So we're able to motivate ourselves. We feel like going to the gym. Right? When you set a 2-week plan, you're forcing yourself to go to the gym. I know just getting in the car to drive to the gym it can be a task. But when you're feeling good and you're feeling healthy, you just, it's almost like you bounce out of bed and you're at the gym, right?
Absolutely.
So it becomes self-motivating. One feeds the other. If you've got a clean mind, you could eat well. If you're eating well and eating clean, your mind is also clean, and it kind of cycles through. Yeah. So it's very important. But so many people will do the gym for 2 weeks, but their diet is still not good. So they're still sluggish inside. They're sluggish up here.
Yeah.
And if you remain sluggish, you need constant motivation to do these things, and you could. In the end, after 2 weeks, you're finished, right?
Yeah, I guess it's going back to your analogy of the car, of going, what, we wash and clean our car all the time, but what we don't actually do is fuel it correctly. And it comes back to that. So even if you've got the wrong fuel in there and you've got a nice, clean, shiny, brand new car, actually that doesn't mean anything, because it's about the health of the vehicle. So you've been an absolute source of energy for us today. Thank you so much. So I guess the key message here, folks, is if we want to improve our control with diabetes, is potentially have a look at our diet. Again, I will stress it, as I always do, of please make sure you're consulting your own doctor or a dietitian. We do have dietitians on the show, which I can put you in contact with, and of course Ramesh himself. As always, it's a pleasure bringing these shows to you. Please do get in contact if there is a topic that you would like us to talk about that we haven't still come on to. I know we've talked about health and relationships already. We are continuing on around the wheel of life, as I like to call it, around spirituality and wealth. So those shows are still to come, but please do get into contact. Whatever you're getting from these shows, we always want to encourage you to get the best from it, and most importantly, to make sure we're adding value for you. So it's now time for us to say goodbye. Thank you so much, Ramesh, for joining us in the studio. Thank you so much. Sat Sri Akal ji, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Sat Sri Akal ji, ji ਆਇਆਂ ਨੂੰ. Thank you so much for joining me again on Dukh Sukh. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਣੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਡਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਡਾਇਬੀਟੀਜ਼. ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਗੈਸਟ ਸੀਗਾ ਰਮੇਸ਼, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੁਝ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ ਵੀ ਕਾਹਤੇ ਡਾਇਬੀਟੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ. ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਕੀਤਾ, ਖਾਣੇ ਪੀਣੇ ਦਾ ਪਰਹੇਜ਼ ਰੱਖਿਆ, ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਲਈ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਲਾਈਫ ਸਟਾਈਲ ਚੇਂਜ ਕੀਤੀ. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੁਝ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਬਜ਼ੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਬਣਾਈਆਂ, ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਡਾਇਟ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਚੇਂਜ ਕੀਤੀ ਵੀ ਜਾਣੀ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਡਾਇਬੀਟੀਜ਼ ਘਟਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀ. ਤਾਂ ਗਾਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਿਤਾ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ ਕਾਫੀ ਘਟਾਈ. ਤਾਂ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਕਿਹਾ, ਹਰ ਵੇਲੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਮੰਨਣੀ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਆ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਵੋ, ਆਪਣੀ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਦੱਸੋ. Make sure you get advice. What we give here is just lifestyle directional expectations of what you can do. But as I always say, please, please, please go see a doctor, go see a specialist for your challenges. With me also we have today a dietitian. The dietitian है Saran Garcha, जिहड़े मेरे नाल बैठी है. Sat Sri Akal ji.
Sat Sri Akal.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
That's okay. So Saran, see काफी कुछ करते हैं, not just look after diabetes. You specialise in managing people's health.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, being a dietitian, you can work in specialist areas, but obviously we look at loads of conditions. So whether it's diabetes or obesity or hypertension or irritable bowel disease or people that have had surgery or malnutrition. So there's lots of areas of nutrition that we would generally work in. Yeah.
So it's people that have had poor nutrition that leads to certain symptoms that will come to you for improving.
Yeah, so I mean, it's usually something that's their nutritional status has been affected by a disease condition, so like diabetes, for example. So it's not that they've had poor nutrition, they've got the condition, and now they need to alter their nutrition and their diet to manage it better. So, yeah.
So we've been hearing earlier on from Ramesh, who talked a lot about whole foods and plant-based foods, and saying that's the best way to manage diabetes. Okay. What's your opinion from coming at it from a pure dietitian perspective? Obviously he had borderline symptoms and was able to control it fairly quickly without being too overt into diabetes.
Yes, I mean it's diet is very important when managing your diabetes. So that's for type 2 diabetics. So the changes he's made, they're great. If they've worked for him, then that's amazing. Everyone is different, so some people might not be able to commit to such kind of extensive commitments in terms of diet changes. So some people can't do such extremes, such as cutting out certain food groups, might be too much for certain people. So again, I think it's looking at your diet and seeing how to tailor it, what small changes you can make to be effective and manage your diabetes in a better way.
Because I guess for most people's perception is, ਜੇ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ ਦੀ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਜੇ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ ਹੀ ਘਟਾਉਣੀ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਆ. But what I've actually learned over time is it's also savoury foods, and that's where the hidden sugars are, right?
Yes. I mean, with diabetes, I think it's a huge misconception that it's just to do with sugar, whereas it's actually to do with the foods that are broken down into sugars, so the carbohydrates. So what happens is foods that we eat, especially those high in carbohydrates, are broken down into glucose.
So carbohydrate मतलब जितना ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਆਲੂ ਹੋਵੇ, ਚੌਲ ਹੋਵੇ, ਰੋਟੀ ਹੋਵੇ, ਨਾਨ ਹੋਵੇ, ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ 'ਚ ਥੋੜੀ ਬਹੁਤੀ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ 'ਚ ਲੂਣ ਨਹੀਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਆ.
I mean, when they're broken down, they turn into sugar, so they turn into glucose. So they give a kind of glucose response when they're being digested, and those are the foods that you need to manage.
So what Saran is saying, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਖਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਜਦ ਆਪਾਂ digest ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਉਦੋਂ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਨੀ ਕਿ, and that either means it's either too much or too little, right?
Yes. So sometimes it's broken down too quickly, so the glucose, we have like a sudden surge in glucose in our system. Sometimes it's broken nice and slowly, so it's steadily digested, and that's the kind of good carbohydrate that you want to go for, but it's the type of carbohydrate and the amount that you're eating, so it's both things that you want to consider.
So you know how the
yeah, so it's both, yeah.
So what's the difference between type 1 and type 2? I know Ramesh touched upon it a little bit, but I just feel that, you know, could you give us a bit more of an explanation of what it is?
Of course. So type 1 diabetes is insulin-dependent diabetes. So it's not to do with lifestyle, it's not to do with diet, it's something you either have or you don't. And in type 1 diabetes, you're simply not producing enough insulin, which is the hormone that you need for your cells to absorb the glucose in your system.
Right.
So type 1 diabetes is seen from quite an early age. Type 2 diabetes is non-insulin dependent diabetes, and that's the most common form of diabetes, and we're increasingly seeing it in children these days.
And that's coming about because of the obesity channels, right?
Yes, exactly.
You know, and we think we don't have sugar. Yes. Actually, that's what's causing it for us because of the way we're eating,
so
right?
It's very heavily associated with lifestyle, diet, and you know, some people are genetically predisposed. If you have it in the family, if you're South Asian, then your predisposition of type 2 diabetes is a little bit higher.
And why is that? Is that to do with, you know, we have a lot of dal sabji, or because of what we're, you know, have a lot of mithais in terms of mithai and stuff? Why would you say?
There's been studies looking into it, and I think it's to do with the carbohydrate intake in South Asians, which has been kind of prehistoric. I mean, our staples are things like roti and potatoes and rice, so it's kind of predisposed us over, you know, years and years and years. So it's kind of, it's just built into our ethnic makeup, really.
Okay, and so Ramesh talked a lot about different vegetables. Is there a particular vegetables that we should be mindful of, or more that we should eat of that helps it?
Vegetables in general are great, so kind of the more the better. Kind of non-starchy veg, they have a nice kind of stable glucose response when they're digested, so those would be great. Things like pulses and lentils, sweet potatoes would be better than your usual potatoes.
Wow. But even though the word sweet's in there next to suitably.
No, again, it's a misconception. It does throw you off a little bit, but so things like sweet potatoes are more slowly digested, and they give you a more kind of gradual release of sugars compared to your regular potato, which is broken down a lot more quickly and can cause your sugars to go up and down quite rapidly.
And when get first told, you know, sugar high, what would you say the key things that somebody needs to do, apart from, so the first thing that happens is we just think, right, cut sugar out completely. But you're saying that's not, and the same what Ramesh was saying, is not the first thing you would necessarily do, right?
No, I think what you need to do is, well, obviously see your GP, then maybe see if you can get referred to a dietitian in your trust to get kind of tailor-made advice, because everyone eats differently, everyone's cooking habits and shopping habits are very, very different, so there's no one fits all. But I mean, the general advice would be just to kind of review, are you having regular meals? So kind of skipping meals can cause kind of predisposition as well, because if you're not eating the whole day, then you're eating in the evening, you're having a huge meal, then you get an instant surge of insulin to cope with all the glucose in your system, but then you're kind of fasting for the next 12-14 hours and not having anything again, and there's a huge dip. So this kind of surge and dip pattern of skipping meals can also play havoc with your insulin production system.
Because that's the same when we see it in, say, training. Like I run a fair bit, that, you know, when you run, you have depleted ions, then you're taking some glucose just to bring your iron levels back up, but then they drop again. And is that because the body's just trying to...
That's it, so it's the same with insulin. Our insulin is produced in response to the glucose in our system. So if we're missing meals, we're not going to have any glucose. So your insulin production will be very, very low. But then if you're sitting down and eating a huge meal, then your insulin production will be very, very high. So it's this kind of extremes that you're going to over the day, which can also predispose you to diabetes.
Is there anything, you know, that when we're cooking, but you know, badaliye, like in the ingredients, can we do that? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, with diabetes, you have to look at it as kind of, there's no diabetic diet, it's healthy eating. So getting away from frying, for example, if you can bake and grill, then choosing to do that. Trying to kind of avoid having too many carbohydrates in one meal. So someone might have, you know, roti with rice and, you know, like aloo di sabji. But that's 3 carbohydrates on one
triple time bad.
So that's a lot of carbohydrates. So I think you need to think about, I need one source of carbohydrate per meal. So like I was saying, regular meals, very important. One source of carbohydrate per meal is very important. So don't cut out carbohydrates altogether, because we do need some glucose source. But again, it's the quantity. So we do tend to overeat in this food group, and it's about managing the quantity of carbohydrate.
So we talked about previously, like you could substitute rice with, say, cauliflower rice or quinoa. Does that again, you know, helps manage that lifestyle better?
It does, yeah. I mean, if you're having kind of rice on a regular basis, then yeah, so kind of switching it up is great. Rice is one of those foods which is a bit tricky. We can always kind of overeat. It's always kind of the main portion on the plate, and it's also something that we would call kind of high glycemic index. So when you eat rice, it's broken down very quickly, and it gives you the surge in glucose and then a sudden drop. So if you're having rice, again thinking of portion, and again maybe not having it with another carbohydrate source, and it shouldn't be the biggest portion on your plate. It should be about a quarter of your plate.
And again, we were talking previously of, you know, what's the ideal sugar number that we should be at, you know, what should be our known sort of sugar levels before you to be considered to be over or under?
Okay, so I mean, with kind of your fasting plasma glucose level, we kind of say it should be below 7, because 7 or over is kind of diabetic, and something between 6.5, 6.9 is kind of a pre-diabetic. But that's your fasting plasma glucose. So normally it's around 5. For someone that isn't diabetic, it's usually around 5.
Average.
Yeah, the average is around 5.
And what happens to someone that we say, like you say, if they're over?
If they're over, so if they're between kind of 6.5 to 6.9, then it's kind of a pre-diabetic state, so it's called kind of impaired glucose tolerance. If it's something that's 7 or over, then they would diagnose you with type 2 diabetes.
And what are the symptoms for it? So again, Ramesh talked a lot about, you know, needing to go to the toilet a lot in terms of passing urine, sweating, but generally feeling very dehydrated. Are there other, you know, as I like to call missed symptoms that ਆਪਾਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ and we're not even aware ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ?
I think one of the most common ones is weight loss, so unexplained weight loss. So some people that have not been diagnosed with diabetes start losing weight without changing anything, and they don't realise, you know, this might be me being diabetic. So unexplained weight loss actually happens because our insulin doesn't work, or it isn't sufficient in amount, so our cells can't take up glucose, and for that reason, if we can't take up glucose, we can't convert it to energy. So our cells start breaking down other energy sources such as fat and muscle, and that causes you to lose the weight. So if you're losing weight at quite a rapid rate and you haven't made any changes to your diet or lifestyle, then definitely go to your GP, because it might be something else that's underlying.
And are there any other kind of key symptoms apart from
so dry mouth, headaches, blurred vision, kind of fatigue if you're feeling more tired than usual, and like Ramesh said, so kind of frequent urination or increase in urine infections, so feeling thirsty as well, so increased thirst. If you're feeling that you've just had a drink, you need another one, or you're feeling thirsty overnight and your mouth is very dry as well.
And what when it's the other way around, when someone's sugar's really low, because our natural, you know, again, gut feel says we'll give them something sweet to have. Is that really what we need to be doing, or?
I mean, if you're diabetic and you are kind of hypoing and you're, you know, having in a state of hypoglycemia where your sugar is very, very low, then we do instantly say to have like a dose of sugar. So whether it's something like, you know, jelly babies, or like a, you know, shot of Lucozade or something, then that is the advice.
Just a way to bring it back
up. It up, because it's quite dangerous to go to either extremes. So low sugar is as dangerous as high sugar.
And again, do either of those being up or down associate with the different types? So typically, like you said, type 1s, would they be more associated with their sugars being high?
So I mean, with type 1, you would be on insulin, so you would be having injections, so you kind of run the risk of both. So, you know, if you're having the incorrect dose of insulin, you're having too much, your sugars could go really, really low. If you're not having enough, then your sugars could remain really high. And again, it's with type 2 as well, so you run the risk in diabetes in general of having kind of hypo and hyper glycemic episodes. So it's about making sure that your control is very good. If you're on medication, that you're taking the correct dosages, you're having it reviewed. If you're having kind of insulin in the injectable form, then making sure again that you're having the right units.
So Charlie, you know, someone comes to you, what advice do you initially give them? Is, you know, how do you kind of assess what changes they can make? Because again, you know, somebody's diet, they've gotten used to doing something for a very long time, and you know, like I said, which is, I think, is just as dangerous. So how do you enable it so that, you know, like you say, they're making incremental changes every day and it's manageable?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's individual advice. So when we see clients or patients, that we would kind of take a diet history, look at lifestyle factors, you know, how active is this patient, what are the hours of working, so some people do shift work, some people have regular patterns, what is their eating pattern like, what kind of things are they eating, what are their portions. So again, we would tailor the advice to that individual, and it's about making small recommendations and then just building on them on review. So we'd probably see someone about 3 or 4 times, and then just gradually building changes, so not implementing them all in one go, so kind of small bite-sized chunks. Yeah.
What about exercise? Or does that again, like I say, you know, the more you're running or you're being so active, obviously you're sweating more, so you're losing the hydration, if that's the key thing to this as well. Yeah. That's also not helping because you're sweating more and you're losing your water.
Yes.
No doubt that's fluctuating your sugars.
Yeah, I mean, with exercise, again, if you're having medication and if you're having insulin, so again, making sure that you're taking that according to, you know, your lifestyle, how active you are and how you're eating. So that should all be kind of tailored to that. Activity is very important. I think especially if you're type 2 diabetic quite early on and it's just kind of diet controlled, then being active can actually help your cells use the insulin that you produce better. So it can reduce the resistance of your cells to the insulin, meaning that they can actually take up that glucose out of your blood and, you know, into the cells. So I think it is definitely very important, either whether it's walking or something very kind of basic. It doesn't have to be strenuous or going to the gym or something that's taken a lot of time. But just like a regular walk for like 20 to 30 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week can make a huge difference.
So Saran, we can control this. Food is the right way to manage this, but get exercise to keep it on top of it.
Yes,
and it's not at the beginning. You don't do it just one day. You have to do it every day a little bit, or every other day, just to maintain it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lifestyle change. So to manage diabetes, it's, you know, a whole kind of overhaul of your lifestyle if your lifestyle is not how it should be. So it's things about thinking about how you're eating, the times you're eating, your activity level. So it's just a general whole overhaul of your lifestyle and managing.
And it makes you, I guess, eat, like you say, at more regular intervals as a result.
Yes.
Because like you're saying, you can't, you're saying you have to eat regularly to maintain it, get it back onto an even level.
Yeah.
So again, you know, a lot of us kind of make those mistakes because of our lifestyles. Or we put it off. But actually that's aggravating the problem, right?
Yes, yeah. So you need to make conscious changes. So make sure you're having kind of breakfast, lunch and dinner. If you're working kind of longer hours, if your day's longer than the usual, then maybe having a snack or 2 in between, thinking about what you're eating. So it is, for someone, if that's maybe kind of used to skipping meals, used to having large portions of carbohydrate and used to not doing any activity, that's going to be a massive change. So it's by implementing these things slowly but surely.
And what changes, as you know, you've been a dietitian now for what, more than 10 years?
Yes, yeah.
So what would you say, you know, the triangle client on there, would you say it's more sugar led or a predominant, you know, disease or a bamari that's coming forward more and more? Because I guess for me, growing up with diabetes, my father is diabetic, so I've kind of known it. That's all I've known. You know, I've known it since I've been born.
Yes, yeah.
But for a lot of people, you know, diabetes has only come into the media in the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Are there other types of symptoms, or other types of diseases that have come forward that kind of go, and actually they're just as important, but people are not paying attention to?
I think diabetes has always been around, but the awareness has not always been there. I think people are now clearly associating being overweight with their risk of diabetes. So you'll have people that have diabetes in the family, but they've never linked their kind of being overweight or obesity to, you know, oh, I'm actually at high risk already because it's in my family. I'm South Asian and I'm overweight. So again, this misconception of, oh, I'm South Asian, but I live in the UK. So again, you know, no, I'm not predisposed, but you are, because genetically your background is from there, so you are predisposed to diabetes, and if you have it in the family as well, it puts you at that higher risk. So I think there's definitely more awareness of that now. There's they're making links to obesity, being inactive, so more of a kind of sedentary lifestyle, sitting at a screen, not really playing or going out. Or you know, being as active as we used to when we were younger.
Those things Ramesh talked us through as well, of going, piche tusi baithe raho and you know 10-12 ghante at the office or whatever. By the time you come home, your body's, you know, you've just let it be stale effectively. You need to get it woken.
Just been stationary, and more so in children these days. So children are increasingly overweight. There's a huge obesity problem in children these days, and you know, it's a massive public health issue. So again, that's hugely to do with sedentary lifestyles, the screen time, the, you know, playing on the game consoles and watching TV and sitting at a computer. So they're not playing outside as much as we used to in, you know, say 20, 30 years back.
Again, like I said, is there any other kind of key exception of diabetes, other kind of diseases that are, I can't say diseases, but symptoms that are coming forward that you kind of go, conditions that people are, you know, should be mindful of perhaps now, just because it's not in the media yet, that you could expect, well, okay, like for me, health has always been there. You know, challenges, whether you're being overweight or they've always been there. You know, and I guess the symptoms are now becoming different, or the conditions are becoming more obvious. So like you've talked about obesity, you've talked about diabetes. Are there others that are sort of coming forward that are affecting more and more of us?
I mean, things like, you know, diabetes is one of those conditions. It's kind of got loads of kind of predisposed conditions to it. So things like hypertension, you know, increases your risk. But I just think generally, you know, being South Asian, if you're in the high risk category already, then that should be awareness enough. You shouldn't have to wait until your blood pressure's high or until you're overweight, or, you know, that's predisposition enough already. So I think that's enough to make those changes, or just to even just generally have that awareness from the start. And especially if you have it in the family, then that consciousness needs to be there.
So as I was saying, so if somebody was to come to you and say, look, Saran, you know, help the Lord, I want to change my lifestyle. How do you start them off? What do you kind of do to help them?
Okay, so it would be about getting an understanding of their lifestyle. So taking a diet history, looking at their weight, looking at their weight history, looking for symptoms of diabetes, looking at any blood results they've recently had from the GP to see if it's been confirmed or if they're kind of borderline, seeing where they sit. And I mean, you can initially be kind of a diet controlled diabetics, just control it through diet, or it might be a combination of diet and medication, or later on it's a combination of kind of medication and injection. So it really depends on their control. So you'll just take that interview and advise accordingly,
Okay. And again, if you had to give some advice to somebody that was unsure, what's the first thing that you would say to them? Because I always say, unsure, then go to see your doctor, get in contact with like the NHS, on their free helplines. Are there other ways that people could sort of, you know, because you get a lot of people that don't do anything about it, you know, the condition gets really bad, they have a blackout or something, then they go, it should have gone. But like you say, what are the telltale signs apart from things we talked about?
Symptoms we've discussed. So any kind of symptoms, if you're just, you know, not feeling your usual self, there's something that's not sitting right with you, you know, you have it in the family, or there's something, then, you know, I think there's no harm in going to the doctor and say, look, I haven't had a blood test for a long time, can we check my fasting plasma glucose, because this is how I'm feeling and I just want to get that checked. So I think definitely go to your GP and get that checked. And once you've done that, again, you can look for further advice online. So like you said, the NHS website has amazing information on there. You can actually look up your locality and see what support groups are within your trust. So each trust is different. So they have kind of local organisations, so have a look on there. Diabetes UK is a huge charity. I've been doing work for a number of years. They have events annually. So have a look on their website. They have a helpline and lots of advice.
Do you think it's now time that we needed I call it a boot camp, and I could be wrong for calling it that, but the feeling on in order to raise awareness, it feels like it needs to come from within the community. You know, if you think of, I'm trying to think like school canteens or something, is how do we educate people properly? How do we get them together that are diabetic and go, you know what, here's a day that you can learn about more, and be able to have, you know, call it langar, whatever, but it's, you know, for diabetics.
I mean, there are events across the UK. So Diabetes UK do kind of diabetes days, they do fairs, they do kind of pop-up stands in local hospitals. So there are things going on like locally. So it is really worth going and having a look at your local services and support groups and what they're doing and what they're up to. So you can do this through your GP practice, or you can have a look online on the NHS NHS website. So there's a lot going on, but I think it's just it can be just this awareness and knowing what's going on locally on your doorstep.
Yeah. But do you think more needs to be done to help, like you say, if it's very much hereditary or very much, you know, we're prone to it at a high risk from South Asian perspective?
Yes. Yeah.
Forgive me if there's somebody out there already doing this, you know, brilliant. I'd love to bring you back. I'd love to bring you into the studio to give us more of an understanding. But I just feel that a lot of the people that have come into contact with me regarding the subject matter will often sort of say, look, there is what's out there in terms of from the media perspective, from the organisations. What I'm referring to is something very targeted that's right for our community, and to be able to talk to them, because again, you know, a diabetes person will often be associated with being slightly older, possibly not understanding English. But how can we help those people, I guess, more? They want to make lifestyle changes.
Yes.
They, you know, like I said, they just think, but they don't actually know that need to substitute something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, again, just coming back to Diabetes UK, they have interpreted kind of all the literature in, you know, several different languages, so that information is there. And I think there are kind of local kind of Asian support groups in certain areas, but you know, the best way to see what is in your area is to look on the NHS website and have a look. But there is certain things going on. You know, there's awareness in schools now because it's occurring in schools. So Public Health England taking it very important, like very seriously. So they are looking at what they can do to raise the awareness and for people to start making changes, and more about prevention than treatment.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. I
really appreciate Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming in and you know, sharing your thoughts. So Saran ne vi sanu thodi ji samjhaya bhai, you know, diabetes da eda matlab nahi hunda bhai thanu sara kuch ਘਟਾਉਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਘਟਾਉਣਾ ਵੀ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਜਾਨ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿਹਤ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਜਾਨ ਕਿ ਐਕਸਰਸਾਈਜ਼ ਵੀ ਨਾਲ ਕਰੋ, ਤਾਂ ਖਾਣ ਪੀਣ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਪਰਹੇਜ਼ ਰੱਖੋ. ਬਈ there's a lot of support, more information out there through the NHS, through Diabetes UK. So please, as I say, you know, ਪਹਿਲੀ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਸਲਟ ਕਰੋ. ਤਾਂ ਦੂਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਚੰਗੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ, you know, ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੁਣ ਰਿਸੋਰਸਿਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਲਿਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, you know, ਕੋਈ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਕਦਾ. So ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਰ ਵੇਲੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ, please, you know, get the advice that you need, get the support. As always, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ 'ਚ ਫੋਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ, free reception, free Sangat TV. ਤਾਂ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰਨ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਰਮੇਸ਼ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ again ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬੜਾ ਸੋਹਣਾ contact 'ਚ ਪਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. So again, I hope you've enjoyed the show for Dukh Sukh on diabetes today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, Sat Sri Akal.